You might.
And rightfully so.
Yeah. I assume you got the watch on us here, right?
Yep.
Will you mind giving me a 5-minute mark?
I don't mind at all.
Thank you.
And I start when you start, so.
That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Good. Okay. Should be good from my standpoint.
Okay, let me just, in case I lose my track of my questions, there are two. You're good?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, thanks for sitting down and spending some time with us
Thank
today.
you. Thank you for your time, too.
So the New York Times, the Star Tribune, and certainly thousands of your parishioners have called for your resignation. Do you plan to step down?
I don't, and I'd like this opportunity to tell you why. First of all, when a week ago I read the affidavit by Jennifer Hesselberger, I realized that she was talking about something very much in the past. She left here 15 months ago, and so she was sizing up the situation that she perceived at that time. Since then, we've done an awful lot of work to really come to a different place, and I think we're in a much better place today than we were 15 months ago or even 10 months ago. First of all, we've had the task force that's come out with their report, and they've made recommendations to us, and we're working very strenuously to meet all the recommendations that they made. Secondly, we've been through, believe it or not, 3,000 priest files, and so we're on top of any misconduct that would have been represented in any of those files. Thirdly, we are beefing up our monitoring system of priests who have abused in the past, and that's become a kind of a state-of-the-art situation. Thirdly, we've come up with a new protocol of any allegation that comes into us. We have a protocol now of contacting the police first, letting them determine the nature of it, and then we follow up with our own study. And lastly, we have 3 what we call essential tools for all of our clergy. We have background checks. This is for religious and diocesan. We have code of conducts, and we have the Virtus training for safe environments. So all of that is in a much better place today. In addition to that, I have a wonderful team, pretty much all new, who are gathering data and responding to situations on a weekly basis. They gather 3 times a week. One of the criticisms we were given in the task force report was that allegations would come in and they would be siloed. Information would come in for one department and what wouldn't be shared with others. Now we're doing a cross, kind of cross-pollination of information so that everybody's on the same page at the same time. And lastly, and I think importantly, when a bishop is appointed to a diocese like this, he really becomes not just the CEO, he becomes the father of the spiritual family. And as father of his family, when problems come up, he doesn't run away, he stays and he works them through. And I feel that I have the energy, I have all the information and experience that I've learned the last 10 months, and I feel that I am able to lead this archdiocese to a better place.
Do you believe for many people you still have the moral authority to be a leader of this church?
I read all the emails and letters that come into me, and it's divided, obviously, but there's an awful lot of support that I have, and I'm grateful to those people who have supported me.
Archbishop, you mentioned all the things that the church is doing, but as you're aware, there seems to be a cycle with scandals, even in this archdiocese, of things are discovered, things that weren't done, and promises to do better. I remember hearing this same kind of conversation from Archbishop Flynn, talking about promises to do better. Why should we believe you now?
Well, because, as I indicated just a minute ago, we have done the work, we are in a better place, and I would hope that people would place their trust in us, because I think we deserve it.
But you acknowledge that these words have been said before.
I recognize that, yes.
You described yourself as kind of a CEO, and a CEO role as well as kind of a shepherd role. And yet in your deposition, it seemed like you weren't aware of what was going on.
I didn't read the deposition that way, no.
Well, it certainly sounds like Vicar General Kevin McDonough was making many of these key decisions and you were not in the loop.
He did make an awful lot of decisions, and he had been making those decisions for many years. And so some of those decisions I was aware of, some of them I was not aware about that.
Let's talk about Father Shelley. In the deposition, you talk about that you could not make a determination about whether the pornography was of juveniles or with adults.
That's true. It was difficult for me to, and I think it was difficult for the Sutter Institution to make that determination as well.
My question is, why were you trying to make that determination at all? There's a mandatory reporter law in this state.
Yes.
Why weren't police just called at the outset? In this case, and so many others.
Well, again, there was a misunderstanding on my part. I thought that the Sutter investigation had gone to the police. And as it turned out, Sutter had been a former policeman, but he wasn't an active policeman at the time.
But you know, and certainly you've been aware that there's a mandatory reporter law, that
yes.
the first thing you need to do is call police.
Yes, and that is what we do.
Yeah. But you just said that's also the new policy, right? I mean, I just heard you go through.
Yeah.
But we've had a mandatory reporter law for 25 years, 30 years in this state as well. I'm wondering why you present reporting it to police like it's something new, when in fact that's been a state law for 30 years.
Well, we report anything that is credible, and I know that credible has a lot of different interpretations.
And it's not your decision to decide if it's credible,
I'm not
correct?
sure, take a breath here for a second. I'm not sure you're understanding the question, Archbishop. He's asking, why don't you call police? You are saying, and you are saying that it's a new policy to call police. What the new policy is that we used to only call police when we believed it was, that we knew it wasn't frivolous. Now we call police regardless.
Irrespective of. Yes.
Right, so do you want to explain a little bit of that, like that's the new part?
Yeah, that's, the determination is made today that we call the police in every instance. Prior to this, we would take a look at the situation, the allegation, and say whether it's frivolous or not. Today we do that.
And you recognize now, in hindsight, that that wasn't up to you or the Archdiocese to decide whether it was frivolous or not. It's up to police.
Well, there was a certain culture back then that, yes, that was wrong. In hindsight, that was wrong.
But that culture is fairly recent history. I guess what I'm getting at is this notion is that this is in the past, and yet this history seems to be fairly recent.
Well, under my watch, there's only been one allegation that has come in on the Father Waymire situation.
Mm-hmm.
And we turned that over immediately to the police.
Let me talk about Father Waymire for a sec. And I want you to address this and give you an opportunity to address it. There seems to be this innuendo in some of these depositions that you had some kind of special relationship with Father Waymire. Can you tell me what your history is with Father Waymire?
I met Father Waymire when he invited me over to his church to dedicate an altar and a sanctuary that they had just renovated. That evening, he invited me to dinner. We had a nice dinner together. And a week later, I had been at St. Thomas the Apostle in St. Paul, looked at that parish a mile away from Blessed Sacrament, and said, if we're going to merge something, this seems like a natural for that kind of merger to take place. So I spoke to Father Waymire and asked him if he would do that. That became more difficult for him. It put a lot of pressure on him and that sort of thing. And so I was dealing with Father Waymire and trying to help him to advance that situation of bringing the two parishes together. After about a year later, he was charged with a DUI, and I called him, as I would call all of my priests, asked him how he was doing, and he said, well, I'm going a little stir crazy here. So I said, well, I'll come over and pick you up on Saturday night, take you out to dinner, and you can get out of the house for a while. And I did that. About 6 or 8 months later, I can't tell exactly, I can't remember which, he reciprocated the invitation, and we went to a restaurant of someone he knew who owned the restaurant. That was 3 dinners in 3 years. It wasn't a special relationship other than the relationship I would have with any of my priests.
Because there's been the suggestion that somehow, and it's even in Hasselberger's deposition, that somehow there was a romantic interest on your part.
And there was not.
Let's go ahead and talk about this investigation that's been done, this outside investigation involving the seminarians. First of all, that has to be very difficult for you.
Well, it's difficult to know that people are making these kinds of things, and they're not true.
Your understanding, how many people are making allegations that you had homosexual relationships with them?
Well, number one, there are none of the allegations indicate that I've had homosexual relationships with anyone.
There are people who have made depositions, though, claiming to have had homosexual relations with
No,
you.
they haven't. No.
My understanding was that there were individuals, 5 individuals, who have claimed that. Are you saying no one has claimed to have had a homosexual relationship with you?
Correct. That's what I'm saying, yes.
That no one has come forward to make that claim?
No.
Where has that come from, all this reporting that...
I don't know. I mean, the claims that have been made against me are of inappropriate but not immoral or criminal activity.
No, of consensual homosexual relationships.
No.
We're clear about that, and no one has come forward to make those claims
That's for sure.
that you're aware of. So this outside investigation that was performed found nothing.
That's a Bishop Bechet question. Archbishop, do you want to explain your relationship with this investigation?
When I began the investigation, I asked Bishop Bechet to monitor it, and I said that I would not interfere.
Okay.
And so up to this point, I haven't interfered at all in the investigation, and so it would be inappropriate for me to comment on that.
Okay. Well, certainly there's a lot that's been said. Let me just kind of ask you what I guess the upshot question is. Have you had homosexual relationships with men?
No.
Are you gay or are you homosexual?
No, I am not. But at the same time, I want to say that I'm not against gays. I look at all individuals as children of God, and they deserve the respect and the dignity of their personhood.
That's not what you said about Brokeback Mountain, though. The movie. You came out pretty strongly about that being an immoral movie.
I was critical of the movie, yes. I don't know that I used the word immoral.
And yet that seems to contradict what you're telling me now, your criticism of that movie.
The church makes a clear distinction between someone who would have an attraction that would be same-sex and the behavior itself.
So when you say you have nothing against homosexuals, you have nothing against homosexuals as long as they're not having sex.
Well, we believe correctly that sexual relations takes place within the context of a committed married relationship.
And yet the church is opposed to marriage, and you fought gay marriage.
I didn't fight gay marriage. I fought for a marriage as a traditional understanding of a union between a man and a woman.
I don't want to get too off on the rails on this issue, and yet there's a contradiction here that I don't think could be denied. On the one hand, you said you're not against homosexual relations as long as they take place in the confines of a marriage and a committed relationship, but then you...
I didn't say homosexual relations. I said that sex is meant to take place within the context of a committed married relationship between a man and a woman.
Okay. What about homosexuals?
Homosexuals need to lead chaste lives.
They need to lead celibate lives.
Well, yes.
Okay. Does that seem reasonable to you, that we should all lead the lives of priests?
Well,
Tell me, Archbishop, why should I lead the life of a priest?
because it is of your nature to express yourself sexually through a committed relationship.
I am. I've been married. I've been with the same partner and husband now for 21 years.
Well, Archbishop, maybe you need to talk a little bit about the church teaching. It's not just with homosexuals. I mean, I'm called to live a chaste life. Right, so
That's
you
true.
want to talk a little bit about that?
I don't want to get too into the weeds on this one, I think.
Well, Tom, he's asking the question, so let him respond.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, at this point you're responding, but I'll go ahead and let the Archbishop respond.
Yes.
It doesn't seem, you understand, it does not seem to make sense to me as I sit here, what you've just laid out.
I can understand that, yes.
Anything you want to clarify?
Well, I think that as we look at the way God made us to express ourselves sexually between a man and a woman in a committed married relationship.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. How great a risk is
5
there?
minutes.
Thank you. How great a risk is there that the church will go bankrupt?
Well, we're hoping that that doesn't happen. We are at the end of the first year of a 3-year window of the statute of limitations, and we are concerned about the number of lawsuits we may have. So we're looking at all the possibilities. I'm hopeful that we won't go bankrupt.
Do you believe prosecution is a possibility? Do you believe someone here at the Archdiocese will be criminally prosecuted, whether it's you or Vicar General Kevin McDonough?
I don't believe so. I don't believe anyone's done anything criminally.
And yet, it seems like there has been a failure to report, certainly by former Vicar General Kevin McDonough.
I can't comment on that. I don't know of any instance where that would be true.
Mm-hmm. Just to get back to this new position that it's kind of a czar of, and I don't want to, but you sort of are going to have a point person now for sexual abuse allegations, correct? One central person that all these complaints can be brought to, correct?
Director of Safe Environments, yeah.
Why not ask Jennifer Hasselberger to have that job?
We are doing a national search to find the best person.
Is she someone that you would look at?
I hadn't thought about it, actually.
She certainly seems to know where the files are, for lack of a better term.
She does, indeed, yes.
She would almost seem to be ideal.
Well, I don't know about that. We'd have to consider that.
What do you make of her and her decision to leave and to go public with these allegations? I'm curious.
Well, I think it was unfortunate that she had felt she had to do this. I think she could have come to me and spelled out what she did, but she didn't do that, and she was a good worker, a hard worker, and I wish her all the best.
Do you believe everything that she's saying in her deposition?
Not everything, no.
Do you believe that that is a case of different perceptions, or do you believe it's a case of...
I think it's a case of different perceptions,
okay.
Yes.
Because she perceived you as being disconnected from the issue of sex scandal, disinterested or disconnected. Would you say that that's an accurate perception?
Not disinterested, certainly. I think that as the task force recommendations indicated, and we're working again to correct this, that there wasn't a mechanism in place. They describe it as a silo effect, that different departments weren't communicating with different departments. And so oftentimes I got caught in the middle of that as well.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the church, when you look at the history of this, and I'm talking about the 10 to 20 year history that's come out in these depositions, sometimes it seems like the church was confused and was trying to make an assessment, certainly Vicar General Kevin McDonough, of was a priest a homosexual and had homosexual urges, or was it something that involved pedophilia and urges with children? And even Vicar General seemed very confused about that and that issue and those distinctions. Would you say that that's correct, that the church has struggled with understanding that?
I think those are two very distinct things.
Clearly they are,
yeah.
but it seems like Vicar General was confused by those two different things. It seems like he was in the process of trying to determine, especially with Father Waymeyer, about whether something was pedophilia or whether something was an adult interest in men. You see this struggle throughout these depositions of the church trying to grapple with this.
Well, I don't think that there was anything in his file, anything in his comportment that would have alerted me to the fact that he had an interest in children.
Waymeyer.
Waymeyer, yes.
1 minute.
Do you see these struggles for the church as related? Do you think the church, because of this issue that they have difficulty with on homosexuals, had a difficulty in addressing the issue of sexual abuse?
I do not see that, no.
You don't? And yet, do you acknowledge that Vicar General Kevin McDonough seemed to struggle with this issue, and whether someone was a pedophile or just a practicing homosexual?
That may well be. I can't make that judgment on him.
Why do you think this is a particular issue for the Catholic Church? Obviously, we have sex abuse throughout our society. Why do you think the Catholic Church has had a particular problem with this?
I think that's a very good question. I don't know. I know that it's a much bigger problem in society. The church is only a part of it. I think when you bring in the whole aspect of religion, I think it becomes more sensational.
How much of the problem do you believe is the culture of the Catholic Church and this desire to protect the church?
I think that the church has always tried to be fair to the priests and to the victim, and to be even-handed in that regard.
The new philosophy is victims first. I remember hearing that from Archbishop Flynn in Dallas. I'll ask you again because it's how we started. Why should we believe you today when you say victims first, when we've been hearing that for about 30 years?
Well, because we're saying it again, and we're saying it with gusto, and we're saying it with meaning.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Very
I
welcome.
really appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Want to get quick too?
No, we gotta go. It's 20 minutes. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm trying to
Thanks.
clear it, everybody.
Thank you.